When you think about Florida, you think about clean water and beautiful beaches, clams and oysters locally caught and eaten at a local restaurant.
We do use our oceans in a variety of ways. They are integral to really our way of life in Florida.
Having clean water is valuable to the quality of life in our environment, but also our economy.
This year has been a pretty hard year. I wouldn't have thought that a pandemic would affect a shellfish market that much.
The coronavirus, when it first hit into full effect and they shut everything down, we've lost accounts that we haven't picked back up.
It's difficult, and a lot of restaurants, I'd say maybe 1 out of 5 is open and doing business. So that cuts down the market quite a bit.
I've been farm raising clams for 22 years, and it was like we went from one day of working to not working at all.
Clams are primarily eaten by consumers at restaurants and raw bars. So when you shut down those businesses, you shut down the pipeline of where the clams are distributed to.
Clam farmers weren't selling their clams to restaurants, which is their main buyer, and so these guys were accumulating a crop, so to speak, and not able to move it.
We started brainstorming what could possibly be done to help these producers. What if we bought some product and helped facilitate that market and put it into some other alternative use? One of the first steps we did was talk with the Florida Department of Ag and Consumer Services, and they were really instrumental. They were able to work with Florida Department of Environmental Protection and communicate directly with NOAA in order to allow us to have the permits that we needed and the management agreements in place.
The next thing was, well, what to do with all these clams? We already have an ongoing restoration program for clams in the Indian River Lagoon. And then we also have the science behind that project, the monitoring being done by Todd Osborne in the Whitney lab. That was in place.
The Indian River Lagoon has been impaired for quite a while.
The causeways were the first detrimental thing that went into our river system. When I was a little kid, I can remember my dad saying, well, now that they got the causeway built, it's going to slow down the water flow and our oyster beds are going to die. And I never thought that would happen in my life. I saw the water exponentially getting worse and worse and worse.
We have lots of nutrient and pollutant inputs from activities on land, and so it's susceptible, vulnerable to those human impacts. And we have seen declines over the decades, but we hit a tipping point in 2011 and going into 2012 where we had a massive algal bloom that was very destructive to seagrasses.
This project allowed us to leverage a buyback operation from clam aquaculture and support those farmers that were in need at the time, but not just buy those clams and put them back in the water, and actually move those clams from disparate farms around the state back to the Indian River Lagoon and planted them there such that they could be doing great work for us. At the Whitney Lab, we have a shellfish restoration initiative. We want to put clams and oysters back in the environment where they do really what we want them to do, which is filter water and maintain good water quality in those systems.
When you think about restoration and you think about the role of a clam or an oyster as a filter feeder, it's part of that, what I would call the healthy infrastructure. So in order to accelerate restoration, first you have to address pollutants and nutrients at the source. But within the system, you want to restore that biological and ecological capacity of filtration. And the Clam project is part of that effort to bring our filter feeders, back to where they once were, supporting both clean water, but also hopefully supporting a viable commercial shellfish industry.
I'm excited about that avenue for shellfish aquaculture and for habitat restoration. I think there's a lot of potential for shellfish aquaculture to be used as a restoration tool, both for trying to improve water clarity and those kind of things, but also just as a physical habitat structure for fish and fisheries.
We're at a point in 2020 where greater investments are needed in order to address the scale of these problems, and that will have to happen through federal, state, local, and private sector partnerships.
The ocean holds so much potential, but we want to do it right, and we want to do it sustainably.
This buyback program, it really made a big impact.
This has really been a game changer and an eye-opener to what else can we do.
The whole Sea Grant network is for both conservation and sustainable use. It's not an either-or. We can have both. It can be very much a win-win scenario.
I'm excited about this frontier. I think that shellfish aquaculture has the potential to be a part of that solution. Not the only part, but definitely a part of that solution to make things better.